Hi.
All right, guys.
Happy festive today.
Welcome back. Excited to have you all here.
I know.
Boss man was kind enough to give me a couple of days off, so I took off Thursday afternoon, and I've been fishing this whole weekend. I just got back this afternoon, and I showered and shaved. Looked pretty for y'all.
Looks like one of the fish box in the eye, though.
You know, I put on some of that pre-cancer cream and thing.
Go with the fish that you in the eye.
All right. A teacher who establishes rapport with the taught becomes one with them, learns more from them than he teaches them. What do you think? You get more out of teaching, do you think, than your kids do?
Oh, God. Especially if you're new, you won't feel that way yet, but you'll walk away and be like, oh my God, I learned more from them than I ever thought them.
Our mentors feel that way about working with you all too. They get more out of what they give than what you are getting from them. And so you're inspiring them to greatness, teaching them new ideas. They're excited about being with you. All right. As you remember, we have 4 modules. We have covered the instructional environment. Tonight starts a 3-part mini-series on classroom expectations. And then we will move on to lesson planning and accountability and motivation later on in the spring. All right, so I want you to think about your homework. Think about one of the instances where you had your calmness tested and share that with your elders.
Or your table group, whatever.
Every day. Supervising it. Ditto. It's really hard to and we had next Thursday, and then we need to write we have to discuss it. So, the referral was done last year. So the next every day.
And then the day you're shocked, but that's how you get over that.
It never happened.
Is he just squirrely, or like?
He has everything, every action that he plays. So
That's fun.
You need a little bit more explicit. I mean, sometimes you don't get it.
It's so hard to reach out to that kid.
Sometimes like, they don't want to. Like today. Stop that.
Well, if he has all those acronyms, social security, all that kind of stuff.
In June, and then it's Saturday.
And so you have them as
I'm surprised she hasn't. So they had to do like an addendum to the weren't they removing? Because it wasn't completely addressed. And I did a little bit of her about it, but I went on her part of it.
She's still playing this, and I'm like, still.
3, 2, 1. All right, you've heard it, you. Point. Here's what I want you to do. In your table groups, I want you to point to one person when I say go. When I say go, I want you to point to one person, and that person has to share their calmness moment. You ready? So we'll start with the back table. You can watch how they do it. Back table. You can't point at Karen though. All right, so you have to point at one of the 3 people at your table. Whoever gets the most points has to share out their calmness. Ready? Point. All right, so share your calmness.
I was just saying today, I had a friend that was on a roller coaster of emotions, and I was just really testing it. I just had to stay calm and try to calm him down.
So you got to take your own emotions out of it. Yeah, very tough to do. Good. All right, this table. Ready? Point. I think you got picked.
Some of us know the same instance.
Same child.
Same child. It's daily.
And so how did it work? Did you use your face? Did you walk? Did you...
Face.
Yeah?
Face and the hands.
And the palms down?
Mhm.
And that worked?
For a minute.
For a minute.
And then when you turn around,
Oh.
it's back. Yeah, he's constant.
All right. So we have to figure something out for that one. All right, this day, we ready? Point.
An ED program.
You only get 1 point. But you're up. You got outpointed. Even with your cheating.
Today a good example, trying to redirect the class from a worksheet activity and stopping them as they're working to give some extra information. So I say, pencils down, here's where listing eyes are on me, that kind of thing. And I want the pencils down because if they have the pencils down, they're playing with the pencils, they're thinking about what they're going to write, they're not concentrating on what I'm telling them, what the instructions are. But there's always like 5 or 3 kids that will not put their pencils down. So you have to like, just turn your body and look at them, wait, go to the next one, go to the next one. Because they won't learn from each other what it is that I'm trying to get them to do. And then you repeat it, and repeat it one more time, and like 3 times after you say pencils down, here's a list, eyes are on me, they'll finally get it, but it takes repetition.
You have to teach to master. Yep. We're going to learn that tonight. All right, this table, you ready? And point.
Uh-oh.
All right, I think you're up.
Today, one of my students started ELD. He's my student in the class already, and it was like a constantly sitting there and just playing with someone. And then I was up on the board like this, and I had to just not breathe. And I stopped the whole room. I just breathe. And I was just looking at him, and there he goes, just, frozen in his tracks, stops tapping the girl next to him, and it's like, yeah.
Perfect.
I just remember just how much, breathe.
Perfect. All right, this table, ready? And point. Point with yourself. All right.
You gotta be on there. So when my comments to Sessiion, usually it's like before the students enter the classroom. It's a 6th grade classroom. Usually they're a little bit squirrely before they head on in. So before I even open the door, I stand there, like straight. And I'm just looking around. I'm just waiting for them to be quiet. And it has made a big difference.
Nice.
I've noticed that.
Nice.
They don't like when we're quiet.
No, they really don't.
They get very nervous.
Surprises are stressful. All right, back table, ready? And point. The empty chair? That doesn't work. You were closest, you get to stand up.
I got it. I'll use one. So, 6th grade class, couple kids in the back not doing what they're supposed to do. So I normally you'll go up and you say, knock it off, whatever, goes to the site you're supposed to be on. But I just kind of snuck up there a little bit and just kind of stared at them. And they were like, what's he doing, I just kept staring at them, and so slowly they just changed their screen and they went towards. So.
Nice. We were fishing on Saturday. My buddy was catching fish, I wasn't. That's all right. Sunday I caught the fish, he didn't. But on Saturday, he caught a big one. I mean, a big one. And normally the fish we catch are somewhere between 18 and 25 inches. This one was 30. It weighed 10 pounds. And he's getting it, help me. So okay, and I go over there, and he wrestled this thing for like 15 minutes, got it in, and I got it in the net. And it's a real tense moment, right? Because it's catch and release, but you want to get a picture. And this is a trophy fish. Okay? And he goes flop, 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 chink. And he's so mad. I'm not kidding. He's just mad. And he turns and he goes, "You suck!"
Yes, I do, but sorry.
What do you do with that? Your best friend just turned to you. Yes. I walked away. They're going to make t-shirts for next year. You suck. So there you go. All right, we're going to practice. So I first want you to find a partner. And Karen, you can do this. So you need a partner. Make sure and I want you to face your partner. Put your feet facing each other. Feet facing each other.
Very serious.
3, 2, 1. Okay. The person with the shortest hair will be A, and the person with the longest hair would be B, and I guess we have no debate over here. All right, A's, you're going to try to make the B's laugh. You cannot use your words. B's, you need to remember to remain calm. No emotion. Okay? No emotion. And no talking. No talking. I'll tell the second grader the third time. No talking. Okay. So remember our breathing technique. We're going to take a relaxing breath. We're going to check our jaw by putting the tongue on the roof of our mouth so that we don't clench. And we're going to find a focal point, not in the eyes. Okay? Maybe right above their eyes. Find a big pimple on their forehead or something. All right. A's, you're going to make them laugh. B's, are you ready? All right. Ready? You got to be quiet so you can hear them. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ready? Adults are harder to control than children. Okay. No talking because you got to hear the cues. All right. A's, start thinking of your comedic routine. B's, here we go. Ready? Begin. Take a relaxing breath. Check your jaw. Find a focal point. That was horrible. And stop. All right, stop. Okay. Now remember. Hey, go. Stop. Hey, it's real important, guys. The more chatting you do, the harder it gets to get through all this, right? So hang with me now. You can't talk. All right, we're going to try it again. I heard a lot of giggling. Remember, when you are talking with students, you've got to take all of the emotion out of your body language, okay? And your face gives it away. You can't laugh. You can't be angry. You have to have no emotion. I don't want you to look like you're disappointed. I just want you to look like you're not amused. Like, whatever. You have a straight, you're holding a straight in your hand, and you know that the guy that just went all in has a pair, and you're going to beat him, but you can't let him know it. Poker face. Ready? A's, you're going to make him laugh. B's, begin. Take a relaxing breath. Check your jaw. Find your focal point. Take a relaxing breath. Check your jaw. And stop. All right, now we're going to switch. B's, you're going to make him laugh. A's, you're going to be remaining calm. No emotion. Hey guys, if you can't do it here, you can't do it with your kids. All right? I know it's goofy, but we got to practice. We got to get to mastery. Here we go. All right, B's. You ready? A's, you're going to remain calm. Go. Take a relaxing breath. Check your jaw. Find your focal point. That's better. And stop. All right, now. Here we go. Now, I want to make it a little more complicated. I want you to stand up and face each other. B's, you're the laugher. A, you're the calmer. Is that an adjective we can use? All right. Now that you're standing up, it actually gets harder because you can use more body movement to make the subject laugh. Remember, you're remaining calm. Make sure your feet are pointed at one another. Ready? Begin. Take a relaxing breath. Check your jaw. Find the focal point. Take a booger. 3. Wow. 1. Okay, stop. Switch roles. Switch roles. All right. So far we haven't used our words. In a moment we're going to get to. All right. Switch roles. Ready? Begin. Take a relaxing breath. Check your jaw. Find your focal points. And stop. Standing up. Go. 3, 2, 1. Whoop. Okay, now, A's. You can use your words, and you can choose to try to make them laugh or try to make them angry. B's, don't take it personal. Don't take it personal, but you gotta remain calm. You gotta remain calm. And begin. And stop. All right. That was harder, wasn't it? I heard more laughing again. Or maybe it's just the wrong pairs. The first pair that goes is like they can't do it. Switch. And begin. And stop. 3, stand up there in 2, 1. Okay, now you are button hooked in such a way that you can see the class. But you got to palm down. You're helping a student. You're helping who?
Student.
Larry. We're helping Larry. Always Larry. All right.
Larry
So you want to be like 3/4. You know, you can see me out of the corner of your eye, but you're kind of turned away from me. We call it button hooks. Okay. With a hand on the desk, and you're helping Larry. Okay. You're all doing it. All right. And so you notice that there's a disturbance over here, and you check the disturbance. You look back down. You take a relaxing breath. You say, "Excuse me, Larry." You slowly stand up, and I'm taking a 6-second turn to face me, the disturbance.
With your Queen Victoria faces.
All right, that's very good.
You want to have one of them? Or
You know you can pick your friends, and you can pick your nose, but you cannot pick your friend's nose. Here we go again. Standing up, button hooked. You find the disturbance. You look back down. You take a relaxing breath. You say, "Excuse me, Larry." Excuse me, Larry. Slowly stand up, and a 6-second turn. Very good. Very good. All right, still standing at your desks. I'm not going to have you move all the way in, but I want you to pretend that you have already given a look, and now you're walking over to the disturbance. Okay? So come to the disturbance. Pick the chair that you were sitting in as that person that's causing the problem. They're still disturbing, so go to palms. They're still not stopping, go to elbows. Give a non-verbal cue. You see that work is going on. You go back to palms. Stay on your palms. Stand up. You don't move yet. You want to make sure that the work is authentic. Say, "Thank you, Larry." Thank you, Larry. You stand there for another 2 seconds. And then you move away. Let's try that again. All right. So you know there's a disturbance. You've already turned in a regal fashion. The work isn't working. So you move in. So move in. It's not working, so you go to palms. It's not working, so you go to elbows. If they're still not getting it, you give them a non-verbal cue. Work begins. You go to palms. Stand up. Thank you, Larry, but you still stay there. Thank you, Larry. Count of 5. It's a work authentic. And you walk away. Go ahead, have a seat.
Did anybody have to do that or try that? Well, did it work? Yeah. They don't like us around them. They act like we don't shower.
And Vanessa was like, to me, she's like,
So this is kind of the nuts and bolts. Like some of you probably realize that proximity doesn't fix everything. I wish it did. It doesn't. It fixes quite a bit, but it doesn't fix everything. So we're giving you a whole bunch of tools in your arsenal to deal with these kids. And in doing so, self-control is the first one. It kind of goes with the Queen Elizabeth face, you know, the turn, all that stuff. Because they don't like that. They want you to be predictable. They want to know what you're going to do. They want to know what you're going to say. And if you're one of those teachers that goes, can I, answer this question, and you don't like the silence, they know that you're going to skip over it and let you out of it. That ruins it all. Make them accountable. Just like with with your discipline, that's why you do all the pausing. You're making them accountable, and you're not walking away, and you're making them very uncomfortable, which is what they should be when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You know, if you go up to a kid who's working her tush off or his tush off, and you do that, they're gonna be like, "What's up? Hi, Mister." So it's always the kid that's screwing around that doesn't like it. You've seen this graphic before, but we've talked about the kids that we have. This is Madera Unified that I put the stats up. It might be 2 years late, but we're probably pretty still. So where our students come from. We have 6,400 English learners in this district. You have 120 in foster home. You have 88 on free, almost 90, in free to reduce lunch, which means you know that the family income is low, because they can't qualify for that if they don't. 25% proficient in ELA. This almost made me choke when I looked this up. Only 25%. And then 16 in math. Well, math is usually always lower, but still, what does that say? What it tells me is they don't get a lot of support at home. Because, I had a kid, my niece that we're raising, she was this kid. She was the meth head mom. Mom runs a prostitute ring out of the house. The kid had everything against her. Mom didn't graduate from high school, 5th grade education. And when the kids would come home, there was no homework time. There was no sit down and have some time to do your homework. There was no, mom never showed up for the meetings. Mom never contacted the teacher unless they thought something had been done wrong to her daughter. And she was in a lot of this group here. I would guarantee you she wasn't more than 25% proficient in ELA. And it wasn't that she wasn't, it's that she didn't know how to utilize it. The kid's brilliant. She has a 4.2 now. And she is in all honors classes. And I don't have to help her, but she knows if she doesn't do it, we're gonna be on them. That's all it takes. You don't have to be that parent that sits down, but our parents either work or don't know what to do. By the time these kids get to, I think, 5th grade, most of these parents have been mathed out. They don't know anything about that. Isn't that crazy? So when their kids come home with algebra, the parent goes, ooh, where are they gonna go? They're just not gonna do it if it gets too hard. And then they come to school, and then we go, you didn't do your homework again? And it starts to build, even if we don't say it, we're thinking it in our head, right? Oh God, this kid never turns his homework in. But there's probably a story. Maybe one kid flat out defiantly doesn't do their homework. But most of them are either taking care of siblings, or have parents that can't help, or parents that won't help. Think about the kids that you have, there's only 120, which isn't as much as Central, but it's a lot. Those kids are going home to a foster home, generally with 1 or 2 more foster kids. They're not, depending on how good their foster parent is, just like any other parent. Except that they don't have a place that they truly feel is home. And you are probably the most secure thing they have. Thinking of that, this is what you're dealing with. I heard over here, there's a kid that's completely misplaced. But no matter how many times you appeal that up, you're probably still gonna have them in your class. And you know those kids. So then what do? Because like when I try to explain to my parents how difficult it is to teach, because my dad told me I shouldn't be a teacher. You've got kids that can't read or write, or have special ed deficiencies that have not been identified, or they have language deficiency and culture deficiencies from maybe they go home to a family that only speaks Spanish to them, which is advantageous for a bilingual, but if they're not fluent in English, you were just confusing them. So keep that in mind, because these kids are coming to us with a lot of baggage. Too much. And then you add the gang thing for the high school kids and junior high and maybe some elementary. I hope not. But then you've got that, and you've got a whole negative family. Their family then is the gang. And school's not a priority for the gangs. You guys probably know that. Like, that's not their gig, right? They don't want you to go to college. They don't want you to. So don't assume. Do not assume what your kids know. We talked about this before, having divorced parents, and how one mom expected one certain set of rules, and dad expected another set. The kids adjust just fine, and they know right well and good who the parent is. They can get away with everything. You've all heard those stories, or maybe been that story, where the parent, you were wanting to be sow your oats a little bit, and if you came from a divorced parent, you knew which parent to go to, and you knew which parent was going to come down on you. But when you got older, you look back, you respected the one that came down on you, not the parent that let you get away with murder, because you realized they weren't being a parent. A lot of these kids are coming from that situation. Their parents don't know where they are at night. They don't know when they come home. That kills me. Or they're abused. And is that all our kids? No. But the ones that we have the most problems with? Yes. They don't come pre-programmed with your rules. They may have heard you're hard. They may have heard you're strict. I used to think it was really funny because freshmen would come in and think I was so mean. And they'd be afraid and they'd sit there petrified. And then my seniors would come in, "What's up, Miss T?" They'd sit down and have lunch or whatever, and the kids would be like, and they thought I was so mean until they found out I wasn't mean at all. And they didn't know my rules, but they knew whether I was tough or easy. I'd rather be tough and loving than anything. And that was what I tried to be. But they crave structure. I knew this, and as a teacher, I did really well with that. But when it came to my own kid, because I didn't have her from the time she was little, I didn't realize how much they crave structure. Because this kid, her big thing was sneaking out and going and running the streets of Corvallis, Oregon. And given what her mom did, that probably wasn't a good thing for her. And so she comes to our house, and we live in Raymond on a dirt road. The only people she can cohabitate with are coyotes. And she can't drive. And she doesn't want to sneak out because she's scared to death because there might be something that would attack her. And then she comes in, and my partner is military, and I'm an ex-high school teacher. This kid came from a 5th grade educated mom with no morals, no ethics, and no rules. And all of a sudden, this kid comes to our house. I go, man, you deserve an award just being able to adjust to that. And she didn't push us, her sister did. She didn't push us much, but she would say, "So what time do I need to be home?" "We told you 9 o'clock. "Okay, well, where are you going to pick me up at?" "We told you Vaughn's." "Okay, but where? On the curb or in the parking lot?" And I'm like, dear God, I'm picking you up. Just look for the car. But she wants to know because she's insecure. She's scared. She's scared if anything changes. Anything. And I sit back and I think, God, she's like most of our kids. I've never had to raise one until now. But that's what most of our kids deal with. And she comes home to what she knows. A lot of these kids don't come home to anything consistent. Hey, Gabby?
No, I'm going to turn the air conditioner up because I can see people getting cold.
Okay. So what I want you to do real quick is talk with your table about what do some of your kids have in common with your childhood. And I know that's getting a little private, so you can choose who you share that with. But what do they have in common? I came from, my dad was abusive, severely abusive. But in his mind, he came from a preacher. He's a preacher's kid. Church of God. Anybody familiar with Church of God? Pentecostal? That was good times. Dresses, no short hair, no profanity. Couldn't go on a date unless you had a chaperone, that kind of stuff. He came from that, and he was the bad boy. So in his mind, he came from spare the rod, spoil the child. So his thing was, if I got out of control, you beat me. But in terms of society, and this is where you're gonna have some of these kids here like this, we were the perfect family. We had a nice house. My parents were the head of the tip-off club for basketball, you know, all of that stuff. They put the front on. Nobody ever asked about any of the marks I had or anything. And no, I'm not beaten now, just want to clarify that. But I realized that my childhood, I didn't have a lot in common with my students because I didn't grow up on the wrong side of the tracks. I didn't, you know, we had money, but when I kind of let my guard down a little bit and started sharing with them about the abuse, all of a sudden it was like, oh, you know, she's not perfect. She's not, and God knows why they would ever think that, but they do. They put us on pedestals, right? You know, like I told you, when they see you at Walmart and they go, oh my God, you shop here? Yeah. Yeah, I'm a teacher and that's all I can afford. So. But so when you think about it, there's got to be something in your childhood that you can connect with some of your kids. And that's what I want you to discuss with your table mate, your elbow mate, whoever you're comfortable talking to. Ready, go.
Parents came and figured out all my dirty secrets. I have newcomers going out here and renovating my house, and they fix most of my students have like parents. There's only like, I mean, every day I think about it, not every day, mom does that. So it's not similar way where they genuinely want to know, but I mean, a lot of them have had to do it. Remember I was sitting here, coming here, I've done so much experience here, and I did some Islamic games and stuff. I used to dress up every time to try to figure out children kind of, you know, make a little like box and put together. Yeah, there's so many. And like, I told her a bunch of things. So she said the last 2 sessions, they did reference and all of them have talking about it. They haven't had any moments. And I was like, I don't know what it is about that, but many reasons, like simple things like, oh, we have to clear some like if it works, even other things like work. The one thing about that is I don't just my teachers show it good. It's not like I think there's, for me, everything. I mean, Israel's mom was Andrew, and I got when they told me. I really think everything will shift I bet it's not a good time right now. You know what, but it's a lot of work. We got it next Friday. Sure, because I know that
I try. Every day I write everything worry about it.
she's great. Okay, we're moving on. I was high school, so I won't do 1, 2, 3 things, but I just can't. I'm doing something about it. So, in saying so, something came up. What about if you weren't somebody that had anything? What if you had a great childhood? Should you feel guilty about that? Absolutely not. That is where you can, don't let that be a detriment. Like, that was my way to connect with the kids, but that doesn't mean everybody has to have some kind of story. So I was telling somebody over there that if you have a great story, then make that a goal for them. Say, you know, I know you have it rough, I heard about your mom, or I heard your dad got incarcerated, or whatever. But you know what? You don't have to follow that path. You can be the parent like I had, you know, and that gives them a vision, because a lot of them don't think they can be anything but what their family is. And that's the problem we have with these Valley kids. You know, a lot of them won't even go away to school. If they go away for 1 semester and come running home. But they're afraid to leave home. But then again, that also means they're afraid to leave this Valley culture. And God help us if that's all they ever see. You know, I'm not saying they have to leave, but bring it back here. But go somewhere and see the world or something. But many of these kids won't. And case in point, I had a girl, I don't know if I talked about her before or not. Very traditional Hispanic family. She was the oldest daughter, middle daughter. And she was an avid. But in her house, fighting was the answer to everything. You got mad, you fought. Great kid, too. And she would sit there in my freshman class and just, most attentive kid I've ever seen. And then I heard she got in her second fight. I'm like, what? So I went and looked into it. And I don't know what it was about this kid. I don't know. But I went to, I think I did tell you the story.
Yes.
Yeah. So she ended up, I ended up going, she was going to be expelled. They kept her in the district. She ended up graduating #1 in the class. She was valedictorian, went to UC Riverside, and her father came up to me, very Hispanic, traditional. I was scared to death of this man, and he was like this tall. And he came up to me and said, "Miss Taylor?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's me." And he said, "I just want to thank you." He said, "I did not want my daughter to go away. I did not." He said, "I was against it, but it's an opportunity for her." And he supported her, and she went.
Nice.
Cool story, yeah. A lot of those parents in Abbott are, but they're exposed to it so much that you can change their thinking sometimes. You can change your kids' thinking, and it starts there.
I have a story.
Yeah.
We had a teacher here who came to South High School as a sophomore from Mexico and graduated on time, and went to Fresno State and graduated on time. And you think about that, it normally takes 7 years to learn academic language. He graduated college in 7 years. Came back to our district to teaching earth science. And he's looking at the kids that looked a lot like him when he was a kid, that had the same background that he has as a kid. I know these kids, I know what to do, and he's loving what he's doing, but he's having problems with engagement, and kids are off task, and kids are someone in observe. And I kind of watched him, and a lot of direct instruction, and then we talked. And I kind of understood him a little bit. He's an overachiever. I'm not going to some other country and learning how to have, in 7 years, forget it. That's just beyond me. This bright person. And I had the utmost respect for him, but he couldn't engage with his kids because he's looking at his kids thinking they're just like me. And I had to explain to him, as a science teacher, you're the outlier. You're not normal. What do you mean I'm not normal? These kids want to goof off. You came to class wanting to learn, and you have to figure out how to engage them. Tell me why chemistry is going so well in earth science, Diane. So we talked about what he was doing in chemistry. Well, a little older kid, okay, I'll give you that. But he was doing labs in chemistry. And the kids loved the labs, and they were into it. And they knew they had to prepare to find out what they were going to do. And then they did it, and then they had to write it afterwards. And the kids were engaged. And I said, you're giving them a lot of direct instruction in your earth science class, and what are they doing? They're off task, goofing off, and being kids. But in chemistry, they're on task, and the difference is what? The labs. Can you do labs in earth science? I never thought about that, he said. I said, look, you're the outlier. These kids want to come here and goof off, especially since they're freshmen, right? How many of you have freshmen? You know what I'm talking about? Oh, my Lord. Yeah. Okay. The only thing worse than a freshman is a 6th grader, so what are you going to do? So he learned that he could, one of the things we talked about was atmosphere. And I said, what makes a balloon pop when you put it up in the air? And he talked, he told me all, yeah, well, how are your kids going to figure that out? Can you put up a weather balloon and watch it explode? Well, not really, because he didn't have the money. Can you watch a YouTube video of it? Yes. And so he did. They showed him a balloon going up with one of these little GoPro cameras and a, I don't know, Lego man or something. And then it pops and the guy spins and he falls. And he didn't explain it. He just said, this is what happens, balloon pop. Why? And let the kids figure out why. All of a sudden they wanted to know. Why'd that balloon pop? And they were engaged. And he began to understand that just because a student talks like me, was raised in the same kind of environment as me, that looks like me, that has the same religious background as me, that had the same experience of crossing the border as me, doesn't mean they're me. He had to learn who his kids were so that he could figure out how to teach them. And that's kind of what we're talking about, is learning your, in business, learning your market, learning your clientele. And it's incredibly important. Where do they come from? And they have different expectations. We talked earlier, remember, about does no mean the same in everyone's house? It doesn't, right? Do it now. Does that mean the same thing in everybody's house? No. And so you have to think about all of these things as you begin to manage your class.
So, I keep saying this, and I want you to embrace it. Your classroom is your domain. It's like, whether you're the step parent or the parent or whatever you are, when they walk into your classroom, it's what you want it to be and what you allow. That's kind of ominous and scary, because when you think about it, whatever you allow is your boundaries. If you let them push you, they're going to push you every day. If you can draw the line and make them conform, you will cut their behavior down. But that classroom, when you walk through that door, is your domain. Doesn't matter that the person next to you is super nice and lets them get away without doing their homework and all that. Doesn't matter. You set your rules. You set the tone. Consistency will reinforce your ways, obviously. And heavy on the front end, which I would say first semester is the front end, will make life easier on the back end when we have to do all the testing that's so fun. If you've already set the tone, you will already have kids that know how to march to your beat. Are you always going to have somebody that pushes it? Yes. That's part of their growing up. That's part of them finding their independence. How you deal with it is how that classroom is controlled. And people thrive under expectations and structure. Case in point was my niece. The philosophical assumptions of classroom expectation is that caring is key. That quote from, oh shoot, what's her name? She's a big education person. That's a major party foul. Who is it? No, the next one. Mark? Madeline Hunter, thank you. Madeline Hunter said, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's so true. Because I ended up teaching English and I was a history major. This was before NCLB. Yes, I'm that old. They brought me over to coach. That was my principal's primary focus. But I was more of I wanted to be an educator. And when he put me in English, I was like, oh dear God, I didn't take any writing classes, and I told you I later found out there were no writing classes. But I don't know English that well. As a subject, not the language. And they put me in this class, and I'm like, oh my God. And my department chair was a crusty older lady who just despised the fact that they put a jock in her department. And I realized real quick that my rapport will get me through on anything. That if I could get these kids to know that I believed in them and I loved them, even on their worst day, I still loved them, they would do anything for me. And I will tell you, I was not a great English teacher, but they believed that I believed in them. And they busted their butts. I was always shocked. And it was, I'm very sarcastic, I'm very flippant, and yet they still felt safe in my classroom, and it showed. So it doesn't matter what you teach, and if you're good with rapport, they can put you in to teach anything. Those kids will do it. they talk about contingent and non-contingent. We'll get into this more next session, but contingent is, oh, I'm so proud of you, you did your homework. So my affirmation of her is contingent on her homework. But if you walk in and I go, it's good to see you, that's not dependent on anything. It's non-contingent. That's just, I'm glad to see you. Which might be really hard for some of the kids that we have, but those are the ones that probably need it the most. They need to know that they're wanted. We talked about discipline styles, whether you were a nurturant, authoritarian, permissive, or authoritative. Ideally, authoritative is the best to be because you don't punish. Wait, is that right? I'll just tell you what I'm drawing a blank right now, but basically you want to be firm, loving, and consistent. So nurturant, sometimes you're going to have to be authoritarian, sometimes you're going to have to be authoritative, and sometimes you're going to have to be permissive. But you're going to have a base type that you basically show most of the time. When you're tired and it's like right before Christmas, most of you are going to be permissive because you're ready to be done. But keep in mind that you're static. You don't stay in one spot. But for the most, I'm drawing a blank. Is it authoritarian or authoritative that we're supposed to be? Authoritative, right? Okay.
Authoritarian is more
Like drill, right? Like drill sergeant. Okay.
Yeah.
So punishment does not change behavior. Think about you as a kid. Even though I knew my dad was going to take the belt to me, it did not change one thing that I did. You told me not to be on the phone, I was going to be on the phone. And I'm still that way at almost 50 years old. I was with friends this weekend, and her little boy set a drink down, and he said, nobody touch it. And he's Mr. Karate, and he goes, hey! And he knocks it over. I'm like, oh. He goes, that's your fault. That's your fault. You didn't listen to me. I told you not to touch it. I'm like, fair enough. And everybody started laughing. They all know me. They're all good friends. But I'm like, that's me. And you're always going to have that kid. I'm 50 and I haven't changed. I'm always going to be that kid. So just realize that you can punish me all you want. But if you reason with me and explain to me why that behavior is inappropriate, and then remind me the next time, eventually it's going to kick in. Is it going to kick in right away and the kid go, oh, I decided to be a good kid? No. But when they're pushing the envelope, instead of just saying, don't do it, maybe go over and say, hey, why are you doing it? See if they have an answer. They're going to go, oh. And then you go, okay, well, here's the deal. He's trying to learn. I want you to try to learn. So why don't we quit messing with him, okay? And I'm explaining it. Like, what you're doing is not cute. What you're doing is not funny. And you're taking him away from his learning. So if you want to sit there and pick your nose, then you can do that. But don't upset the other people around you. Classrooms management has two main, actually this is supposed to be expectations, but identify and teaching your classroom expectations, and you teach it to mastery. That's what Steve was talking about earlier. That is what we put in the teach tos. And you'll get intensive coverage on that. But you know that if you can't stand the way these kids come in and sit down, then you need to teach it to them. Instead of repeating yourself 25 times for every kid that comes in wrong, tell them what you want. And teach it, practice it, and then reinforce it. You know, if she comes walking in the door and she's got a Red Bull in her hand and she's, screaming, what's up, homie? And you're like, no, let's try that again. Why don't we go back out? Didn't we talk about this? We've all talked about how to walk into class. Let's try that again. Well, at that point, it's not funny because she's not amused. He's not amused. You've now embarrassed them, not really embarrassed them, but you've taken them out of their coolness. So you go, come on, let's go with me. Show me how we're supposed to do this. And then when they do it well, you make a big deal out of it. Hey, that was awesome. See, I knew you could do it. And they went from being somewhat scolded to, oh yeah, okay, I did it right. Saving face. And then unconditional positive regard. I would put that as / rapport. When you have a good rapport, you can tell the teachers have good rapport. Their kids are respectful, they're comfortable, but they also know their boundaries. And it doesn't matter if you are stricter than he is. If it is what you can operate in your classroom and what you're comfortable with, that's what matters. These are kind of dumb moments right here. Behavior can be taught, it can be changed, And good discipline is a matter of timing. Sometimes, like if he's sitting there and he's writing gang signs on his paper, do I need to stop instruction to address that? No. And if you do, you've then disrupted the 40 kids that you have in class for this one. That's something I would go, note to self, all right? And then when there's a pause in the day or pause in the class, you can walk over and say, what's up with that? And don't just punish, ask him. There's a reason why he's drawing gang stuff. Either somebody has tried to get him in, or he's in, or dad's in. There's a reason. He doesn't know that. How many of us could sit down and draw a bunch of gang signs right now? Because we're not in it. So there's a reason why he's doing it. So don't, when they talk about good discipline, there's behavior that is disrupting the class. That's something that needs to be dealt with. But if you see a kid, with tagging on their backpack, it's probably not a good thing to stop your class to go into that. And somebody asked for breaks, so you're getting a break. Actually, several of you asked for a break. So, if you need to go potty, or if you need a drink, they're in the fridge. 10 minutes. Go get more tackle.
I have a game. Yes. Here's my piece of picture. Here's the Steve one. You can sign it. That's the game I belong to. Remember church? West Side? West Side Church in Rochester.
I guess I should how you guys are always in the church.
On Mondays.
Learning.
I'm offered by President State and President Pacific. So we just direct you that way. It's 275, I think, or 250 for President State, 300 for President.
Oh, total? Because.
Well, I mean, she wouldn't know anyway.
It's not that bad. And these are 75 feet, so we're what?
I'm trying to verify my email
300,
address.
4 units.
I'm gonna do this survey.
Yeah, University of San Diego, which is a private college in San Diego.
I'm just gonna send you an email. But I imagine it'll be just the way it is, but my IOP for my outcome and for my mentor, I know that intern gal is fun. Also, we get Megan, yes. So anyways, we have a plan to meet Monday to finish it, but I'm gonna be late. It's like a day, probably a day or two late. It's due at 1. She said it's fine. Okay, so I just didn't know if I needed to notify you anyway, but she's gonna come in and observe because we.
You might get it. If my reader is on it, you might get it.
Should I post it or, because I don't want to send someone that EOC plans, I don't want to send back anything. Okay. Alright. So Megan's like, make sure we see it, and she's like, I'm pretty sure he'll be fine with it, just make sure. So, then we're with her today. Yeah. It's not that bad, it's just I need to sit down and do it at the time that I'm gonna be using evidence instead of let it go after a week, because then I forget.
And that's the difference that it's not as bad as your correction class.
That's what I'm saying, those month classes and thank you.
They're both like $100 same price pretty much. What is this, the cheapest thing? Is it just like a pasta? It would be 2 pastas, a salad, 2 loaves of bread, lasagna and rigatoni, whatever, like, yeah. And then Sal's would be beans, rice, and a platter with quesadillas, taquitos, burritos, and chimichangas. And beef rice. And then chips and salsa. Well, actually, you already go? Okay, cool. So I might have to do one more time. Let me set it down. Where's like one day Maybe it's Guadalupe. After we turn around and be like,
And that is the secondary One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8,
Don't ever go to the First of all,
Are these on both sides? Are they taking advantage of that?
really pretty. I know that's against it.
Probably not.
Let me tell you, I worked softball
And then to learn it.
we're all looking for people with tissue in their mouth. Or they'll say, stall 1 and 3. And then you go, okay, cool.
I sat by and no one said anything.
Okay, we'll get ready to start in about 30 seconds.
So she called, she's like, what's going on?
Yeah, that's really bad.
I hear music.
Do you whistling?
I'm sending out a survey Monday to the feedback before we get started. I think projects. I know they tell me stop.
Well, when we used to sleep together, and she was a singer. We had these songs that we'd be singing in the car, and she'd go, thanks for yeah. I know, right? Oh. Oh, how funny. Yeah, you do look like her. And you're a teacher too? Cool. So you're talking about the You know, and I had everything, you know, 2XS. The only bad thing was my dad and great dad. It ended up being fine, but it was something I could use. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started in the ones that are still tinkling from hers. So self-control is you, right? The Queen Elizabeth or Queen Victoria. Is it Queen Victoria? I put Queen Elizabeth. Sorry, Queen. The turnaround, you know, don't give in, use your relaxation technique, and don't engage in debate. Okay? When you take the debate bait, they won. So if the kid goes, well, you know, I didn't do it, and you want to say, yes, you did. Well, right there, you're engaging in the debate. Don't engage. It doesn't matter if he thinks he didn't do it. If you saw him do it, that's all that matters. I mean, I don't mean to sound like, you know, a dictator, but the fact is you run your classroom. And whether you thought you saw it or not, if you choose to deal with it, you deal with it. And as long as you are fair and consistent, you know, it doesn't matter. They obviously were doing something wrong, or you wouldn't have identified it. Unless you just really don't like the kids, but I don't see any of you being that way. So, remain calm. And remember that your fight or flight is going to engage. Especially when the kid stands up and squares up and tells you to, you know, F off, you are going to be mad. And a dead giveaway with me is my ears turn bright red. We're bright red.
When they yell at you, you suck!
Yeah, yeah, or your friend yells at you. But you've got to be like, I think the best response, I've told you before, is when my friend goes, when kids call her a be off, she'll go, that may be. However, you are going to the office now. And I was like, that's so funny, I've never been called that, but that's funny. And she is, she's terrible, she's mean, but she's effective in her teaching, and certain kids connect with her. And that's what really matters. Do your turnaround, use your relax, oh, I already did that. And the debate, catch yourself. I am the queen of debate. I grew up with a debating father whose only view in life was his view. So if you ever took another perspective, it wasn't like, well, tell me why you feel that way. It was, no, you're an idiot, right? So I instantly get my hackles up if somebody calls me on something. And case in point, an umpire did something the other day, and he was out of position, and I'm a right fighter. And I said, you missed that. He said, Coach, that's enough. And I said, well, maybe if you'd have turned around and been in position. Yeah. I got warned about being sportsman, and I'm known for being a good sportsmanship person. And then I walked over to my player and I said, honey, it's okay. The girl made a great diving play. And I said, it's okay, she took it from you. And he heard, he took it from you and tossed me. I was mortified. I've been tossed before, but now I'm older and more sophisticated and I think calmer. Apparently I wasn't that day. So it's not worth to get engaged in those debates because they are not going to win. Don't let them win. You are the umpire. No matter what I said, it wasn't going to change the fact that he felt I had dissed him. Fair enough. These are 3 of my favorite questions. And when you guys asked, well, we kind of talked about it with him, his gang tagging. Your classroom integrity questions are your CIQs. So a kid's sitting over here and he's shaking his knee and it's shaking the whole table. And you see all the people at the table going, question, can I continue to teach? Well, he's not bothering me. Is he bothering his classmates? Yeah. Which means they're not learning, right? He's oblivious to it. I'm a knee shaker, I'm sure some of you are. He's oblivious to it, it's all part of it. He's still engaged, but it's affecting his classmates. In that case, you have to address it. But if it's a kid that is doodling and paying attention in his way, like I used to be one of those kids that had to be writing a note because we didn't have text messages back then. I would write a note and I'd have to fold it very pretty, to send it across the classroom. If I wasn't doing something else, I couldn't pay attention. Imagine that. I'm a little bit squirrely. And I had to. So you're going to have kids that have to do that. You're going to have kids that need to fidget with something. And if it's not disturbing you, that kid, or his classmates, who cares? Pick your battles. I mean, if you hate fidget spinners, I get it. I know they're probably outlawed in Madera Unified, but just using that as an example. outrun or outrule, whatever. But if you have a kid that is under the table and you don't even notice it, but he's doing it, and nobody else is bothered by it, you're not bothered by it, let it go. But anytime an instance comes up, and you'll get quick with this. Sorry, you're in the spit row. Anytime you have an incident, just take a second. You know, can I keep teaching? Can he keep learning? And can his peers keep learning? And if they can, don't choose to address it. Or address it later. That is, I would say this is like the Bible for what you deal with. Take a second, just a second. Because you know, is it 90% of what you teach you remember? Do you guys know that? It's something, it's 20%, is that right? It's 20% when you hear it. 10%. 10% when you hear it.
It's something like.
It goes up to like 50% if you
Write it.
write it, and then 70 to 90% if you do it.
Yeah. And think about it. I told you I wasn't an English major. And I wasn't disciplined enough to be one chapter ahead. So I just had to go out and figure everything out on my own and do it the hard way. But I learned, I would say I'm fairly good at English now. Fairly good. I do well. I could walk into any classroom and be comfortable, AP to low. But that's because I've been teaching it, and I was so much smarter as a teacher than I've ever been as a student. So think about how well you internalize stuff once you have taught it. So take a second and talk about, say this to one of the people at your table so that you've got it in your head a little bit. The 3 CIQs.
No, because I'm alone. Please stop. I just thought of it. And then this getting some still learning. She had her leg on the table.
Okay. Go ahead and stop. Applause.
This is like, why is her leg up so high?
Wrap it up.
It's got their back.
Wrap it up. How many of you have served as substitute teachers? Yeah. That is an ideal situation for the CIQs. Because you know as a sub, they are going to push you, right? They're going to push you. Or they'll say, hey, why don't you be a cool sub and just play the video all day? And you're like, well, your teacher left me a lesson plan. So when a kid decides to do something really ridiculous in your class, it's just to see if they can get you, especially as a sub. And if you go through these questions and the kid's standing in the back flipping you off, well, if nobody else sees it and you don't react to it, what he's doing is completely irrelevant.
Wasn't there a movie about a substitute?
Oh, I'm sure.
Like came back from Nam or something.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. That brings up
Nothing very well.
This is a review of your proximity. First thing you would try to do, or one of the things, I wouldn't necessarily first, because I'm lazy. And proximity means I have to walk over there. But it is one of the tools in your repertoire, right? And if you're roaming anyway, it's a good one to have. 2 to 3 feet away, 45-degree angle, and I'm just going to stand here like some of you talked about. Even if I'm lecturing, I'm still talking, but I'm standing here and this person's still going, what is she doing? What is she going to do to me? You know, they know that we can't touch them, so, but they still think, why is she standing there? Is she going to spit on me? Highly likely, by the way. But, you know, they don't like it. Use it. And then you prompt, I need you to get on your work. How about you do number 5? And I'm still standing here. Okay, she doesn't do it, then I redirect. Then if she doesn't do it, she's being openly defiant. Okay, if she's being openly defiant, that takes us to a whole new level of refocus, and we'll talk about that later. Well, because it's in steps, so these are my favorite. diffusers. Kid sits in the back of the classroom and goes, Steve, what scene are we on in Romeo and Juliet? And he says, I don't know. He goes, Miss Taylor, I hate Shakespeare. It's so stupid. Yeah, I understand. That may be. However, you're still going to turn to scene 1. And you're still going to follow along with all of us. Okay? Most of the time, when you come back at a kid like that, you're not engaging in debate. You're just saying, you're right, it may stink, but you're still going to learn it. Yay! Okay? One of the examples they gave at one of my trainings, though, was a superintendent's kid. And the kid said, I'm too stupid to understand this. And the guy, without even thinking, said, probably so, but. And then he just went, oh, God. So he said, be very cautious of your audience. These are the 5 main diffusers that you can use. Think about how you would use them. Because these kids go, I'm bored. I'm sorry. We're still going to do this. Right? And the kid is expecting you to say, but this is so great, and don't you love Shakespeare? They don't. You're going to make them love Shakespeare, but right now, they think it's a waste of time. So debating with them about whether they're really bored or not is not relevant. Just, I'm sorry, and move on. And then you can do prompts. Whoa. It's not working.
Give it a second.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's a long intro.
Okay, prompting. That's when you go up, and a lot of you, I saw you doing this during the Queen Victoria thing. You know, the point. That's awesome. You know, hint, hint, get to work. Okay? If they don't, you can prompt them verbally and say, how about you do number 5 for me and show me when you get done. Now you've posed a challenge and something they can do to get some positive recognition. If the kid says, this is absolutely ridiculous, I don't want to do it, you're talking about a defiant child. Most of them aren't going to do that to you. If they do, we have another step for that. But for the average kid, if the kid's off task and you just go, hey, how about you do, this is a kid that does no work, right? Not really good. Can you just do 2? Do 2 and show them to me. That would be awesome. Okay. Most kids don't want to be a jerk to you straight up. So, except for maybe that one kid. But if they started doing the questions, you know, you're giving them positive kudos as we go. You can gesture, which is what many of you did. You can model. I'll tell you a story about that, though. I had this kid. It's sad, but it's kind of gross, too. He was in my class, beautiful little beach boy. Blonde hair, curls, adorable. And I went over to help him one day and help him with the problem. And he didn't get it. So I'm showing him how to outline his paragraph and all this. Had his pencil in my hand, I set it down, I walk away. And I get a notice from the office later that we had a boy that was going into the bathroom and wiping stuff in his poop. It was him. And I had just grabbed his pencil. Yeah. So I don't suggest that, keep your own pencil. But I know, he's been okay, he got a lot of help. But I was like, how gross, and he just let me do it. Like, you can ask him a question. Hey, do you not understand what's, are you confused? Can I help you a little bit? Boom, positive attention, right? To the kid that's usually getting negative attention. You can make a statement, I need you to. Behavior momentum. Can you read those?
A strategy employed to help break down a complex task into more.
That's the whole, I would say that's still, what is it? Prompting, not prompting. That would be modeling to me. When you model, you're probably going to break stuff up for them.
They never asked me to model, I'm too ethnic.
Well, that's, yeah, I don't get that asked to do it. But like, let's say a math problem. I did Avid. And so a lot of times kids came in with these extensive Avid math problems and, cosine, whatever, I'd be like, does that make a sentence? Con, I didn't know it. And you got really good at Socratic questioning, so you didn't have to know it. You just knew the right questions to ask, so they would figure it out. But they would come in with some of these massive questions, and I would have to say, okay, so you got the first part, right? Yeah, well, that's where you do, process of elimination. Okay, well then, what does your note say about the next step? Now, can you spend all that time with one kid? Probably not. So would you do that? Unless, maybe if they're doing quiet work, maybe if they're working at their table, maybe if there's not, or they're working in groups, that's an opportunity for you to break away for a second and spend some time just maybe breaking it down, making it simpler. Just like all of us want smaller pieces to digest things. I'm one of those that, I'm not a visual learner. I have to go through it, so it would take me forever. Physical, I would say that's the same as modeling. You're taking them through. You could even say, here's my, because you guys have iPads or something like that, right? So if I gave her my thing and said, okay, now let's do this together. And we're doing it, but the whole class is watching. And I'm guiding her so she won't fail. I'll make sure she doesn't fail. And this might be the kid that never does their homework. But all of a sudden I've empowered them to teach the class, in a sense. And I'm protecting them from fail, so I'm scaffolding. But I'm also forcing this kid to pay attention. Scary? Yeah, because if you have that kid that takes your tablet and goes, hey, don't give it to them. Don't try that kid. Teach twos. I'll give you the basis for the teach twos. And you can start thinking about them because your homework's going to have something to do with this.
Homework.
My pet peeve as a teacher for AVIC was I would always say, let's get into circles. And we had the desks attached to the chairs, and they'd do this. And of course, I had hard floors. So all you heard was, and then I'd go, God, would you stop? Would you stop? Just pick it up. And then somebody else would do it. Can you just stop? And at that point, I'm already ticked off. Fight or flight, I'm ready to scream. I'd be doing the tongue thing, right? So instead of going, hey, maybe I should do a whole class lesson on that. It won't take me 5 minutes, but I'll get my point across. So I show them how I want them to sit. I want you to pick up your chair, and I want you to pick the whole thing up and walk it to where you're going. Then you will sit down, and you'll make sure your backpack is tucked underneath. Okay? Everybody says, okay. Okay, now I want to see you do it at your chair right now. And everybody gets up and does it, right? And then you say, okay, we're going to try it for real. And I'm not going to say a word. I want this side, not right now, but this side of the room, you're going to move your chairs into a circle. This side of the room, you're going to have your own circle. I don't want to hear any scraping. I want you guys to show me how great you can do this. And then I say go. And we see who gets it. Inevitably, that kid that always touched the cup would be me. I would probably start it scraping, but then as soon as I saw you look at me, I would pick it up and do it right. So don't lose your cool on the one kid that tries to test you, unless they're really being an imbecile. So you do it, you model it, you teach it, they model it, and then ideally, you're supposed to, when you have the whole class practice it, then when they're done, there is a side of this that they say you show them all the things not to do. And the reason you don't have a kid do it is because then the kid can say, well, I'm the one that modeled that, right? So you do it. You know, I would show them the dragging or raising hands. You know, don't do, ooh, 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 ooh. You know, Miss Taylor, Miss Taylor, Miss Taylor, Miss Taylor. God, if I hear my name one more time, I'm going to scream. So realize, okay, that if you teach it, now you can say, okay, this group get in a circle. One person drags it. You go, can we try that again? They know. They know. You've already taught it. But you got to realize you need to teach everything that you want done in your classroom. Some stuff's going to take a lot of time, and some stuff, like to where to turn papers in, piece of cake. Just realize you can't get mad at them if you haven't taught it. And I would say, here's my quote, I would say make sure you develop rapport, and we're talking about how to do that. By showing that respect, okay, by showing compassion and understanding, making eye contact, wandering the room, making contact with every kid somehow. It may just be, you know, good morning, how you doing? Okay, that's all it needs to be. Sometimes it doesn't even need to be words. Just be a smile. But that kid knows that you just recognize that they're there today and that you cared. And when you start doing that, you start scanning your room, you'll see the kid who's normally upbeat, who maybe has their head down and their shoulders dropped. Note to self, I might want to talk to that kid. Okay, or the kid that is falling asleep. And I can tell you, vice principals get so many of these. You know, this kid came unprepared, this kid came and fell asleep. And they send the kid out of the room. Well, wait a minute. The kid probably didn't sleep. Whether it was because he was running the streets or taking care of his brothers and sisters or just helping around the house or nobody home to tell him to go to bed. Because, you know, they get on their computers and their phones and it's like a whole new life. They don't have any energy loss. So they're sitting there with their headphones on and everything else. It gets away from them. They don't have adults. That kid falling asleep is not being disrespectful to you. There is something making them that tired. Because, you know, most kids would want to be acting up and being a part of what's going on. So even if it's negative, they still want to be a part of it. And consider this. This is a defense of teach choose. What do you do when a kid doesn't know how to read? You teach it. At least you try to teach it. Okay, what do you do if he doesn't know how to swim? You teach him. What do they do if they don't know how to multiply? You teach them. What do we do if classroom management is ineffective? Yell. Absolutely. Beat them, throw them against the wall with Velcro, whatever works. You teach it. So if a kid is driving you crazy, other than the normal kid that is always the one that's going to drive you crazy, think about it. If the majority of your class isn't quiet when you come up to talk, maybe you need to teach them what it is you expect of them when you walk up to the front. Something that simple. You know, I had an orange box that I spray painted. That's probably the most artsy crafty I'd ever been. And I put it on a shelf back there, and anytime a kid came in, they'd say, Miss Taylor, where do you want me to turn my work in? I'd say the orange box. But you know how many times I had to say the orange box? Because I never taught it. I assumed. And we all know what that means. Teach twos. You model, you lead, and then you test. Right? We all know this. I do, we do, you do. I know we all love it. Perfect, imperfect, almost. I don't really like that last circle, but that's part of the, they say, part of the teach two thing. I think you model it, you have them do it with you, and then you have them do it on their own. And that way you can say, you didn't do it, I need you to go back outside and try that again. And it may be, you may have to go through this whole thing. Okay, tardy for me is not this, but I'm here. Or sprinting through the door, you know, stuff flying, I'm here. No, that doesn't work for me. Okay, if you're halfway through that door, you are not here. Here is sitting in your chair, and I go show them, you know, sitting in your chair, backpack put away, stuff out to learn. That is here. And some of you may not be that strict, I love it, but specify it. My deal was if you weren't inside the door. If you weren't in the door, you were tardy, and you owed me a latte from Starbucks. But I had seniors, so it worked. But keep that in mind. You've got to specify all that kind of stuff. What's a tardy? What if they're with another teacher and they come flying in the door and they don't have a note? You know, do you accept that? So you explain that. Here's my gig. Developing rapport. Sense of humor, obviously. I know a lot of people are afraid of relinquishing any control and having a class discussion, but you would be surprised at how intelligent your kids can be when they are asked to engage on a fairly intelligent level. And it can just be like this. We had elections going, and they were asking about props. I'm so the wrong person to ask about that, but they asked me, and so I said, well, let's talk about it. So I assigned each group a prop and let them do some research, and then we talked about it. And they had to tell me the facts first, and then we could talk about their opinions. Because I wanted to hear them, and I always try to tell them, you know, I came from a house where you couldn't express your opinion. I may not agree with you, but I'm not going to tell you that. And so it was amazing. It was amazing how much they taught me about the props. And when they're asked to do something that is empowering to them, They will give you everything they got. And when you ask them to speak and share their information, that's an empowering thing. And it is scary, so that's why you teach it. You say, okay, today we're going to have a little classroom discussion about this, but I need you guys to be on it. So one of the things I need you to do is when a classmate speaks and you're going to respond to him, you're going to say, I hear what you're saying, and here's what I think. Instead of, that is so stupid, here's what I think. And that's hard because that's their first instinct. Or no, that's not how it is. My dad said, that so-and-so's an idiot. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Has he done some good things? Yeah. What has he done good? Boom, class has a bunch to say. And that's where you tell them. So we're going to have this class discussion. When you respond to a peer, this is how you respond. When you want to participate in the discussion, I need to see your hand like this. Not like this, not like this, not jumping up and down, not waving anything at me. I'll get to you. And they will give you the same respect that you're giving them. And it starts, it's painful. Beginning is very painful. At first you won't have any kid talk at all. They'll just all stare at each other. And then you ask them a question to something that really matters to them. Like immigration. Or one of the props that would ring a bell with most of them. Well, they're going to have opinions about that. And that's when you get them to talk. I will tell you that when we did Socratic seminars for the first 6 months, everything came back to religion. Everything. And as a teacher in a Socratic seminar, you're not supposed to comment. I go, oh, God, here we go. But the kids took it out. They learned, I learned some stuff from them because of the stuff they were saying. The only time you really step in on Socratic is to try to keep them from fighting, but you should have taught all this beforehand so that they are respectful to one another. So that said, don't be afraid to have classroom discussions. I know you feel like you're getting off task. You're probably losing the total curriculum guide thing, but the rapport you're going to develop by showing respect to these kids for their varying opinions, they all notice. This one over here hates the president. This one over here hated the other president. You're going to get that. So validating both of them and letting them know that, you may not like them, but they both did some good things, and kind of bring that together. Another way is showing interest. He plays football, and you go, hey, how'd the game go? Did you play well? No, normally they'll go, yeah, we won. No, I'm not asking if you won. I know you won. I saw it in the paper. How did you do? Right? And then, well, what does she care? Well, they're realizing you do care. And find out, if you can, in small talk, what your kids do. Especially the quiet one that sits in the back, doesn't make any waves, doesn't ask any questions, just turns her stuff in. Make an effort to talk to them a little bit. And it won't all happen in the first week. But they know you care about them. I had a little girl about this tall who told me to F off, the only kid that I've ever had in my entire career. She was this tiny little petite thing. And I dealt with it, and I think I've told you guys about it. What I didn't tell you, I don't think, is at the end of the year, she wrote me a letter. And mind you, I was furious. This kid told me that. I've never had anything like that. And she wrote me a letter, and I thought, did her special ed teacher make her write this? I was a co-class, co-teaching class. Bless you. And I'm like, I wonder if he told her to write this. 2 pages telling me that she had me completely misread, that she was very sorry, and that she thoroughly enjoyed the class, and blah, blah, blah. I went to her teacher, I go, did you make her write this? He's like, write what? You didn't have to make her write this. He goes, nope. And I was like, oh. And that was a kid I didn't put much effort in because she had made me mad. So it wasn't one that I was going to go over the top because I was afraid she was going to lay into me another time. I'm human too. But I did try to show respect, and apparently it paid off. I didn't think I was showing much at all, but be available. I know some people close their door at lunch. I know union-wise you're supposed to. I never did. I always had kids in there. I also provided tutoring, which I don't know what good that was for me to provide tutoring, but whatever. Know their names. Know their names, because you're going to need to know them in 30 years when you run into them at the store. And or when they're serving you at the bar, which happened this weekend. I walked in, it's a restaurant, press box, it's a restaurant, and we were getting ready to come in, And I'm here with one of my friend's little boys, and I hear this, Miss Taylor, what do you want to drink?
Iced tea.
I said, what? And there's Maddie, a kid I had in Avid, knew his family dearly, didn't even recognize him. And I'm like, it's a little weird for you to be giving me that beer. A little weird. And he's like, weird for you? So, know their names, because I couldn't think of his name. And I was like, Facebook, trying to go through, and I remembered it all of a sudden. But know their names. I had a stroke, I don't know, a couple years back. And I used to be great with names. Great. Then I had that. I'm doing good to remember faces. And these kids come up to me now. The older ones, I remember like nothing. Like nothing. The newer kids, after the stroke, can't remember their name for anything. And you'll see me like look at their name tag. Because I'm so petrified that I'm going to blow it. They don't care. I mean, they might say, do you remember who I am? And you go, yeah, of course I do. I remember where you sat and everything. I totally didn't. Or in boys who go from boys to men, not the band, they're boys to men. They walk up and you're like, where'd you get those I'm spitting again. Where'd you get those muscles? Where's that mustache from? Like, I don't like it. And then they say, Miss Taylor, I have 3 kids. There you go. Right? So, one of them I ran into at Home Depot last weekend, and I didn't see him, but he saw me, and he's like, Miss Taylor? I'm like, hey, hi! And I immediately look at his name tag to make sure I had the right name. And then I said, you're a daddy, huh? He goes, yeah, I have a 17-year-old. Oh, no. He goes, no, I inherited that. Okay. Makes it easier. And share things about yourself. I know so many people think that when you get up here, you don't need to share things about yourself. If your kids want to see you as a person, they need to know stuff about you. And it doesn't even have to be personal, scary stuff. It can be like when you come up and share about your ship fishing. Or, you know what, this weekend my family and I went camping. And let me tell you what happened. The kids love it. They love it. Even the kid that sits back there and goes, who cares? They're really listening. They really are. Because they can't believe that you're normal. Right? They can't believe you're normal. And I think, I used to be very careful. I had a principal that told me, when we were talking about the Prop 8, I had just gone through a major split up. And I was not about any of that. And I wasn't going to cause any turmoil with any of my parents by letting my kids research that. So that was the one prop we didn't do. We had a power outage, and we have no windows at Central. And we were sitting outside, one of my kids, a Mormon boy, said, super great guy, I love him. And he says, Miss Taylor, I have a question. And I mean, I don't think it was because he was targeting me. I think it's because I was his teacher. But he said, what's the difference between domestic partnership and marriage? And I go, I don't know. I said, I know there's different rights. And I really didn't know. I wasn't lying. I really didn't know. But I thought, we're having a fairly intelligent conversation right here. He went home and told his mom that we had a great conversation too. The next day I got called into the principal's office, which was common for me, but not for this. And I walk in and my principal's sweating. And I'm like, oh boy. And I sit down and he says, Jenny, I know you tell your kids that you're gay at the beginning of this year. And I said, what? I go, do you announce that you're straight? And he said, well, no. I go, why would I announce that? That's none of their business. And he says, well, you talk about your family. I said, yes, I do. I talk about my family. We. They don't need to know who we is. If my daughter happens to come in here, cool, they can meet her. But I don't need to go into detail about that. I go, I'm offended that you would even think that that would be on my priority list. Well, of course, then he falls apart. And he goes, well, I got a parent complaint. And I said, well, I know exactly who it is, and I know exactly what it was about, and you do realize she's Mormon, and they're against the Prop 8, and her son came to me. It was not me. And I said, does she want out of my class? Does he want out of my class? No, God, no. He loved your class, but... And I'm like, then this conversation is mute, right? Because technically you can't have me in here talking to me about this. Oh yeah, we're done. And I realized that even when I go to great lengths sometimes to do the right thing, you're not always going to be treated like it's the right thing. And that's the hard part of being a teacher, but it's also the blessed part of being a teacher because you influence these kids' lives constantly. When you give them a voice to give their opinion, if a kid says, we shouldn't be in Iraq, I know that's passe, but we shouldn't be in Iraq. And I say, well, okay, why? Why? Well, because it's dumb. Yeah, that's not going to work. Give me a reason. Give me a reason. One good reason. And they say it, awesome. Absolutely. I understand that point. Doesn't mean I agree. I understand your point. Does anybody else feel any differently? There's your discussion. But you've given them a voice. And the time that you don't, which I had one of those, this kid was very open and liberal, and they were talking about something racial, and I felt like my classroom was getting out of control. I could just feel, nobody was saying anything, but I was getting scared. And I turned to her and I kind of jumped on her a little bit. And it wasn't like I said anything she said was wrong, but I kind of shut her up. And I walked away from that and I went, that was the worst thing you could do to that kid. That is exactly what your dad did to you. And I walked out and I was just mortified. And I later apologized because what she had to say was very good. But I was so scared about what was going to happen here that I didn't validate her. Thankfully, you guys probably know her mom, Trish Blevins at the high school. Thankfully, the kid is a well-rounded kid and it didn't crush her. But sometimes you're going to make mistakes. It's okay. And it's okay. I think one of the most important things you can do as a teacher is to say you're sorry. Because most of them do not hear that ever. Ever. My father never said he was sorry. And I had a coach that was like that too. And so I always try to make sure that if I'm wrong, if I embarrass him in front of the class, apologize in front of the class. But if it's something you did, in talking to them or whatever, don't be afraid to pull them aside and just say, I'm really sorry, because they don't get that from people in authority. Okay, and that's a powerful way to gain respect right there. Oh, and relate material. Tell your stories. Make them realize you're human, but then use it to your advantage when you are teaching something. If you're teaching that essay, that personal essay that they have to teach, they have to write. Ms. Taylor, I don't have anything personal to talk about. Well, I bet you kind of do. I said, excuse me, I have hiccups. It doesn't have to be tragic, but tell me, did you get a pet ever that you loved? Did you ever have, well, yeah, I had this dog once. Oh, there you go. That's the story. And if it may, you have the kids sitting there doing nothing, that's where you walk up and go, hey, do you need some help on the subject? Okay, well, let's talk about it. Do you have anything in your life that you love? You have pets, sports? You like working on cars? You probably don't, but most of these kids, you're going to have to dig, and when you finally get something, when they're not difficult like this, then you ride on that. All of a sudden, you showed interest in them. Like most of them will tell you they might farm, they might work on cars, they might be into art. Like I was shocked at how many kids were into art. How many kids write poems. And if you could connect with that, oh my God, you've got them. You've got them. I have a running joke with the cheerleaders, because obviously I could never be a cheerleader. And so whenever they come in their outfits, I would always have to think of something really positive, because they know how I feel about it. And I'd say, you guys look awesome. Where are you guys cheering today? What's your favorite cheer? I could care less, really. But I want that kid to know that I care. And so I would sit and listen to them. I will tell you, I know I'm full of stories, I'm sorry, but this last story. When I first started teaching AVID, I had a class like this. And I wish I had done a case study, because I didn't. First group of AVID kids, basically we cast a net and said, who liked field trips? Who wants to go to college? Boom, you're in. That was and that's not the way AVID's supposed to be. And so we had about 16, no, we probably had 25 kids. And I'm sitting there looking at them and I'm like, dear God. I'm supposed to stand up here and make them believe that I believe in them. So I'm like, you guys know why you're in here? Mind you, I didn't believe 1 ounce of this, because I knew how they were picked. And I said, you know why you're in here? Because you are smart. And people have just missed it. And you know what? The schools finally realized that you are smart. And you know what? We're going to make this happen. You guys want to go to college? We're going to make this happen. And every day I tell them some kind of something about, you know why you're in here? Because you were great, or blah, blah, blah. You're the role models for the school now? You know that people know you're an AVID, and you're the role models for school? And you could see them just start every single one of those kids graduated and got accepted to a 4-year college, straight out the gate. Now, if you know what the rates are in this valley, we have 11% college graduate rate. So when you have that many kids getting accepted, of kids that were not targeted ideally for Abbott. These were just basically kids that wanted to go to college. I mean, I had one kid, well, 2 that were in gangs. The one that I told you about that graduated from UC, well, actually she graduated from UC Merced. You know, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of stories. And you realize, even if you tell them one time that you believe in them, it shocks me how many of them hold on to that. But on the other side of that, they've all got a teacher that told them they couldn't do it or they were stupid. And they will hang on to that too. So be the one, even if you don't wholeheartedly believe in it, which I think you will eventually, tell them that you believe in them. Because you're going to start seeing things that will make you believe in them. And it's crazy the amount of success they can do if they just believe in themselves. It's crazy. And you know, you got to realize this is a weird world for them. Education is not stressed in most of their homes. So you telling them they can do something, you're coming from a position a little bit higher than others in their mind, because you know you don't shop at Walmart, and you say to them, you're going to make it. That kid's going to hold on to that. Hold on to it hard. Now they're all over the place. I mean, they're lawyers, doctors, all kinds of stuff. It's pretty cool. This will be it. In your groups, talk about 5 common teach-tos that you think everybody would have in their classrooms. And then share the 2 most important. And if we have time, we're going to have you just stand up and share out for your table. Okay? So you have 6-7 minutes. 5 common teach-tos. Oh, sorry.
Coming into the classroom.
Or get their attention. Yeah. Yeah. Chromebook card. Yeah, upside down, backward, shove them. How to get a Chromebook. How to put it away.
I'm sure. I can not say.
Arrival setup.
How to come in. Starting your day. They come in all day. To get their attention.
Okay. When you progress, you mean like your mid-sentence, right?
And just like in the middle, when we're so focused on one person wants to do it, and then
I think it should be a constant stream.
or you're teaching a lesson. What's my greatest one?
That's like right there.
This one time over the weekend, I was doing.
I know. I had a teacher that solved that problem with the pencils. She had a couple.
Still?
So you needed a pencil and grab the
That's what I started doing. I said now you can sharpen your pencil. You can have it break starts at lunch. And if you sharpen anytime, you're not going to die anymore. You will not die. I promise you will still be alive. I will.
Speed walk, the whole way there. Make sure you identify one that you're gonna share out.
And I'm sorry, there's only 15 minutes left, so no, that's right. Sorry, I talked to you.
They stop asking.
Like they know how
Now the whole thing. Are you done? One asked me that, and I was like, you'll know when I'm done. Whenever we stand.
1 minute.
I need to get it. Because I had a chance to finish up another activity that I was doing, so they got that and it would shine to the thing. Oh, that's the
She brings her in, but says it. You know, he doesn't give any of things. Miss Velasquez, she is
30 seconds.
so I once you know the answer, you write it down. And then you can text yourself, right? And if you get called on, perfect, you know the answer. But
Time. All right. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to do one, but here's the contest. Now, as we progress by tables, you cannot copy another table. So you might have to think on the fly. And we started in the back before, so we're going to start in this back over here with a common teach to.
As I say, I can't see you.
Alright, we picked the two we didn't like quite get to the two, so I'm just gonna say two, and hopefully it's good. One of them is teach what winning is, and then it's the student goal versus someone else's goal, or what they want. It's teach them that you can win several ways, not just that first place, no, or whatever. Right, because the world is open and everybody could be successful depending on what it is they want. Another one is teach expected behaviors, and that's because kind of what you mentioned earlier is they need to know everything that you expect in your classroom, and everybody's expectations are different. Like my first job was at Enterprise Secondary, which I felt like I got thrown in fire, and the teachers were getting fired everywhere. The only reason I got the job was because nobody wanted that job, and had a really rough crowd. So I felt that we had to go from scratch. Okay, I had to teach every behavior. These were high school kids, but they were climbing bookcases and things because they've never had a teacher for more than a semester. Everybody was quitting on them. And I almost felt like it, but I really needed a job. So when I came back after Christmas break, they did everything that was taught before, because all of a sudden they're like, what are you doing here? I was like, I told you guys we're going to keep it going. And like, hardly any issues after that.
Nice.
Because I came back.
You didn't give up on them.
And a lot of them, it was a sort of like an SDC class, but a lot of them ended up passing the exit exam, and they were placed there more, I think, because of behaviors. They ended up getting their diplomas and moving on, and I run into them, and they work, and they are being successful.
That's awesome.
This table. You can share one.
We had, we were thinking of the common ones like entering and leaving.
Entering and leading. That's a good one. All right. How about this table?
They're all looking at each other.
We're elementary, so we put lining up.
Oh, yes,
Lining up.
quietly.
Lining up
Yes.
quiet. Yeah, junior high still a problem with that. All right. How about Eric's table?
We did technology, so putting away Chromebooks.
Putting away Chromebooks. Good, you have to teach them. I was the principal of summer school this year, and I kid you not, I'm walking down the hall, and I got a kid that I'm going to expel. Gonna call his parent. I continue to walk down the hall, we get on the radio, we got a room on fire. Okay, I'm going to kick out the room on fire. As they come by, security says, by the way, we're missing 3 Chromebooks. All this happened in the space of like 10 minutes. Yeah. I'm not a drinker, but I think I need one tonight.
He was doing his tongue thing.
All right, yes, technology.
We did, well, we have to pick some new ones now, but, the attention signal
Attention signal, yes.
and restroom.
And restroom. Okay, good. Back table.
Well, in our school we have the Refocus Center, so teaching them how to go to the Refocus Center, how to what to do in the Refocus Center, how long it should take you in the Refocus
Nice.
Center, and how to return to class.
Good. We're going to go over that too.
Excellent, yeah.
Nice. And the note table.
I'm an RSP teacher, so I do reading lab. So one of our goals is to not run when you come into class.
Walk, don't run.
So I only done it once.
They're so excited to see you.
Only once. I went outside and I made them go back and I'm gonna watch it.
Perfect.
Only once.
That's exactly
There
it.
you go.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. All right.
Make sure you
Homework.
teach them how to bring you presents.
In your classroom, in your Google Classroom that's already in there, describe 50 procedures that you currently use in your class. And it's got to be not just the name. If you're going to tell me how you line up and that's a procedure, how do you do it? So it should be, it's going to take you a while to do this. And then list 20 teach-tos that still need to be taught. These are things that you haven't taught yet, and these, all we need are the labels.
So can there be overlap
Yes.
if some things are not working?
Yes. We'll let you. But you tell us what, but give us a description of what you tried, and then I still got it back. All right, evaluation is also on your agenda. If you can't read it, or don't have a QR reader.
Oh, one more thing real quick. This is not about this. A good friend of mine, former student, is the attending doctor ER at Community. They have started a new program and they need to get into some of the classrooms, especially secondary. It's a program to, what they've realized is that through Vegas and Sandy Hook, that so many of the patients that died were because of blood loss, not because of a fatal wound. And so one of the problems is, like with Vegas, security and, well, people, first responders could not get to those patients until the police had cleared the area, which is 35 to 45 minutes. And that's why so many people died. So these surgeons and doctors all got together and said, you know what, we need to do something. And they realized they could teach lay people how to stop bleeding to at least maybe save them for the first responders. So there is a group of doctors that are actually going anywhere they can go to talk to teachers, secondary kids, whatever, to teach them how to do that. And I've got them into a couple of the high schools, and I want to get them over here at Madera. But I think, you know, you teach these kids this, and they're going to also have a little ownership of some stuff. That's kind of empowering them. But it's more than the first aid class. It's not a first aid class. It is just about how to stop a fatally bleeding wound. And anyway, if anybody is interested in possibly having them in your classroom, they'll come in. They have a 1-to-8 ratio, so they'll bring as many doctors as they need for your class, and they'll work with these kids in small groups and teach the importance of this. So if anybody is ever interested, you can email Stephen. He can get it to me because I keep forgetting my business card. But I can connect you with Dr. Campaign, and she can set that up. So anyway, yeah. What are you? I don't know if